Oh, let's talk about it. So if you are hearing any noise, I have a window right here in my office. Here's a plane right now, and it's facing the front of my home. I wish I could bring my camera. I would pull it over, but it's not that interesting. But it's open because it's a nice day, but it is competing with the noise. So if you hear noise, chainsaws, any gunshots, anybody screaming, just ignore it. We're in here for that. All right, welcome to CNN. First things first, I am the underdog, Kirk Kennedy, because you are the underdog. On this channel, we take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. If you're of the Christian tradition, don't forget that the day of the Lord is approaching, so we want to remember the future. We live in light of the future. And we are moving. I appreciate everybody who has been liking and subscribing to the channel. We are currently at 4129. Let's get to 4150 by the end of the day. That would be amazing if we could get 4,150 subscribers on our way to 5K and beyond. All right. Let us have this conversation. Listen, I got plenty of videos I was going to do. I got to do this. I got a video coming up on part 2 of The Occult Among Us. That's going to be tough. Of course, I got to talk sports. Caitlin Clark, my Washington Commanders played yesterday. I need to talk about it. But today, first, this video, I just got to be honest. I'm a believer. Some of you know I'm a pastor of a church. My church is a few hundred people. I'm a believer. I care about people. I care about sports. I care about culture, everything. I challenge a lot of the idolatry I see, believers in particular. I don't really challenge non-believers in the same way. Have in the American political system. I call it theological instead of theological and stuff like that. So I just happened to this morning, I woke up, spent time with the Lord, made sure my kids all, because the bus drivers haven't been showing up. I've been dropping my kids off, picking them up. So I wanted to make sure all my kids were good. And then I was like, all right, it's about 8:40. I'm taking me another nap. Mondays are my day off, right? That's my weekend, Monday. So with TGIM out this joint, right? So I just happened to take a quick nap, woke up, and I don't even use Twitter that much anymore. Twitter just became a dumpster fire to me. My favorite social media is this. I mean, I still do Instagram, Kirk Kennedy at Instagram, at Kirk Kennedy. I'm a photographer, so you see some of my work, and I still post up on Facebook, mostly pictures and an occasional. But all I care about is YouTube. But I'm on Twitter, and I see this exchange, and I read this for about 10 minutes, and it reminded me that I think this is the worst way, the absolutely worst way to use the Bible. I see Christians do it all the time, and I'm just going to be honest. I'm not calling Christians who do this dumb, but it's dumb. It's the absolutely worst way ever to use the Bible, and we'll get into it. So let's look at this real quick. Here's what I saw on Twitter. All right. Anthony Bradley, I followed him for years. I think he can come off as a bit antagonistic online, but it is what it is. Everyone will stand before the Lord and give an account. There's some stuff he says that I agree with. But so I open up, and now this was hours ago, so things have changed a little bit. But there was this picture. This is what he posted. And here's what it says. It's a picture of an elephant and a donkey with one body, two heads on each side. And at the top, it said, Jesus X'd out underneath politics saves, right? And it has people on both sides with their hands up worshiping. I'm sure you can see it, but in case you're not. And it says on one side, evangelicals for Harris. On the other side, evangelicals for Trump. Anthony Bradley's commentary was this. This cartoon is one of the most idol exposing things I've ever seen. Below is taught nowhere in the Bible or Christian tradition. The gospel is not a call to use idolatrous political structures to transform society. The Bible teaches this nowhere, not a single verse. And then he went back and forth with this guy, Tyler Torty. And I'm not doing all this blocking names and stuff. This is just, they put it, it's public. They put it out there. So Tyler's like, look, they had this long exchange going back and forth. And Tyler was like, look, I don't agree with this false and misleading frame. The gospel is a revolutionary call, not only for the salvation of souls, but the transformation of society. We can both preach the gospel and challenge the spirit of the age. And Anthony Bradley would respond back with stuff like this. Question: from where do people learn such errant teaching, which is not taught in the scriptures nor the Christian tradition, about the call of the gospel is, right? So there was on the original post, there was a long exchange, right, of them going back and forth. And Anthony Bradley's point was, what verse says this? And he kind of alludes to that here. From where do people learn such errant teaching, which is not taught in the scriptures nor the Christian tradition, about the call of the gospel is? And then he said, I agree with you on this point. LOL, look at how much I'm... And then, so this is a different exchange. I tried to go back to the original one, but for some reason, Twitter doesn't let me go all the way down. But this guy is trying to say, I didn't say that the gospel, all this stuff, right? So basically, the argument from Anthony Bradley is, what verse does the Bible say that in? Now, on the face of it, it looks like, yeah, that's the biblical thing to do. And many Christians, and I used to do this in the past, yeah, what Bible verse is that? Give me a Bible verse for that. There's people that, you know, I know a guy that has Bible like merch. You know what I'm saying? Seiko, my man Seiko, be like Bible chapter verse. I get it. But let me tell you why I think this is the worst way to use the Bible. I think this is the absolute worst way to use the Bible when you say, well, what Bible verse is that? Where does the Bible say that? Here's why. Because the Bible, when you do that, so I know that people have these clever acronyms like Bible, basic instructions before leaving earth. The Bible is not an acronym, but I know that people have created these things and it sounds clever and it's cool on some level, right? But the reality is the Bible's not basic instructions before leaving earth. It's eternal instructions. It's salvific instructions. It's not that. But I get it. It's cool. It's fun. Put it on a t-shirt. Maybe sell a couple copies of it, right? But here's the reality. When you say what Bible verse is that, it sounds like you're defending the Bible, like I trust the Bible. But you're actually turning the Bible into a circumstantial manual, which it also was not designed to do. So let me explain what I mean. In 2 Peter 1, I'm going to pull this bad boy up so you don't think I'm just talking out the side of my neck, all right? 2 Peter 1, Peter is explaining to the church, or to the Christians then, about the Bible and the promises of God and so forth. And he makes a good claim. And I'm going to pull this up right now so you can see this, all right? This is what he says about the Bible. Here's what Peter says about the Bible. Here's what it says. He said this, all right? Beginning of verse 3, 2 Peter 1. His divine power has granted to us all things that pertain to life and godliness through the knowledge of him who called us to his own glory and excellence, by which he has granted to us his precious and very great promises, so that through them you may become partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world because of sinful desire. All right? So here's Peter saying with the Bible, this is what the Bible does. The Bible has granted to us all things that pertain to life and godliness. In other words, we have everything we need in terms of how to honor the Lord. We don't need any more commands, any more understand. We have everything we need to understand how to honor the Lord, right? That's what he says. But it doesn't say we have everything that we need circumstantially. That everything that we need is in conjunction with not being partakers of the sinful nature, right? So we have everything that we need. If you're a believer, the Bible will give you everything you need to be different from the world in your character because of your faith in Jesus. But the Bible doesn't give us everything we need in terms of every question we have. It does not deal with every circumstance that we're going to experience. So when you say stuff like this, what Bible verse is that? It sounds like a good thing, like this is what we should do. And of course, as a believer, you want to start with, does the Bible speak to this issue? Does it affirm or deny or this issue? We want to start there. But the Bible, in many ways, does not do that. It is not a circumstantial manual. In other words, God did not write the Bible so that we could know everything that we have to do. There's a verse attached to it, right? So to the question that Anthony Bradley was asking, what Bible verse is that says the gospel is supposed to transform the culture that we live in? I would 100% agree that the Bible doesn't do that, and that Christians have fallen on both the left and the right, have foolishly followed the political realm instead of crying out to the Lord, right? I completely get him on that point. But when you say, what Bible verse is that? It is absolutely the worst way to use the Bible. And let me give you other reasons why. If I were talking to Anthony Bradley myself, and this may sound facetious, but I'm trying to make a point, I would say, what Bible verse tells you to go to college and get a degree as a professor of theology? What Bible verse tells you what denomination to choose? What Bible verse tells you when to baptize your children who grew up in a Christian home? What Bible verse tells you what your end times position is, your eschatological position? What Bible verse tells you how to structure your church? How many songs do you sing on Sunday? Who does your announcements? How do you preach? What Bible verse tells you to preach expositional versus topical, right? What Bible verse tells you that you have to teach with a fallen condition focus, a main point and 3 supporting subpoints? That's what we teach. Guess we get taught in seminary. What Bible? I mean, you can go down the list of what Bible verse. The Bible isn't supposed to be used like that. It gives us everything we know for life and godliness, but it doesn't give us everything. So on one level, Anthony Bradley's question is true. What Bible verse tells you to do that? But there's no Bible, but that's a dumb question on one level, because there's not Bible verses. Christians, believers, we do a lot of things that have nothing to do with Bible verses. This is why we hear phrases like in Ephesians 5, right? Discern what the will of the Lord is. Make the best use of the time. Understand what the will of the Lord. It's a process, right? This is why Paul, and this is why I think one of the greatest chapters that is forgotten in the Bible, especially when it comes to sort of the political realm, right? One of the greatest chapters in the Bible that is absolutely forgotten is what Paul said in Romans 14. And I strongly believe that Romans 14 is really, if more Christians had this perspective about the current culture that we live in, then we would be struggling less about who's voting for what. It's really fascinating to watch this. I don't know why my cursor is doing this. It's trying to make me mad. The enemy's trying to make me mad. All right. I'm going to go to this. I'm going to show you this. This is not letting me make it big. But let me show you this Romans 14. See, it's doing it. There we go. A little bit bigger. Come on. Knock it off. Stop trying to highlight. I'm not trying to highlight. I just want to get bigger. I want to get bigger. I want to gain weight with the script. All right, it's not doing it. All right. This is the best I can get. This is the biggest I can get. Here's Romans 14. This is what Paul says. Here's what Paul says in Romans 14. Listen to what he's talking about. He says this. As for the one who is weak in faith, welcome him, but not to quarrel over opinions. One who believes he may eat anything, while the weak person only eats vegetables. Let no one who eats despise the one who abstains, and let no one abstains pass judgment on the one who eats, for God has welcomed him. Who are you to pass judgment on the servant of another? It is before his own master that he stands or falls, and he will be upheld, for the Lord is able to make him stand. And then he says this, verse 5, one person esteems one day as better than another, while another esteems all days alike. Each one should be fully convinced in his mind. The one who observes the day observes it in honor of the Lord. The one who eats in the honor of the Lord, since he gives thanks to God, while the one who abstains in the honor of the Lord and gives thanks to God. For none of us lives to himself, and none of us dies to himself. For if we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. So then, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. For to this end, Christ died and lived again, that he might be Lord of both the living and the dead. Verse 10, why do you pass judgment on your brother? Or why do you despise your brother? For we will all stand before the judgment seat of God, for it is written, and so forth. This is the reality. This is where when people say to me, oh man, you're supposed to vote because black people, our ancestors, right, died so that we could vote. That's very well true. But voting is not a big, again, what Bible verse tells me to vote? It's not a biblical responsibility. It's an opportunity, but it's not, I don't have to do it. If I feel like, you know what, my conscience says that the political system is too ravenous, it's too vitriolic, it's too idolatrous, and I'm watching Christians lose their character over who to vote for, and then I'm not going to participate in that. That's my right to do that. When Paul brought this up, I don't know if you realize this, but when he's talking about eating something, that was a big deal, what you could eat. There were dietary laws, and even today, there's people like the Seventh-day Adventists and different denominations that think that, like, hey, if you are eating foods that you shouldn't be, like, you should still be eating the Old Testament dietary law. That's a big deal. When Paul wrote this was a big theological issue. That he talks about one person esteems one day as more better than the other. That was a Sabbath. People thought you got to keep the Sabbath, and some people thought you don't. And Paul said, look, it doesn't really matter as long as you don't judge your brother for being different than you. This is how we need to, and people are going to say, yeah, but what about so you mean to tell me if you vote left and right that they care about this? Brother, you cannot bind people's consciences. This is the point of Romans 14. Who are you to pass judgment on your brother? I may think it's unwise to vote this way, and I would never vote that way. But everyone stands before the Lord, and he was the one who will make them give an account. This idea, the Bible's not going to say that about a ton of things that we do. It's not going to tell you what you should do because the Bible is not written for that perspective. It gives us everything we need let me tell you what the Bible is. The Bible is the character manual for all circumstances. It's not what you should do in all circumstances. The Bible is how should you act. So when I'm offended, you love your brother. When you're hurt, you forgive. When you're struggling with lust, flee sexual immorality. Do not lie. Do not steal. The Bible is the character manual for all situations. That's what it is. It is not the manual for all circumstances. So to say, well, what Bible verse is that? There's a ton of things that you do. What Bible verse says I should watch the sports, Redskins? What Bible verse says I should get season tickets and have them? What Bible verse says? What Bible verse says how many songs we should sing on a Sunday morning? Should we use instruments or not? The Bible just says in Ephesians, look, sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. It doesn't say with instruments or what. It can never end. It can never end. It is the absolute worst way to use the Bible because what you do, when you think you're standing up for the Bible, you're treating it as a circumstantial manual. And that's not, you're actually proving that the Bible is less than what you're pretending it is or thinking it is because you're reducing it to, well, if it's not in the Bible, then there's a ton of things not in the Bible, fam. The Bible doesn't say anything about choosing a physician, what health care to get, what it doesn't say anything about cancer or how to manage it. Should I smoke marijuana because I have cancer? I'm just using it. I don't have cancer, at least not that I know of. But do I get high because I don't have an appetite? Do I do this? It doesn't address circumstances. The Bible is the ultimate character manual. It tells us how to behave in any circumstance. 1 Corinthians, and whatever you do, whether you eat or drink, do all to the glory of God. Okay, I know that I want to glorify God when I'm watching this game. How do I do that? Well, one, I'm not going to get angry and yell and cuss at the screen when they do stuff. Two, if there's a commercial that comes on and it shows women and their bodies and objectifying them, I'm going to look away or turn the channel. There's things that I can do, but it doesn't give us what to do in every circumstance. So if you are a believer, you can disagree with me, but what Bible verse do you have that says that you don't use the Bible this way? At the end of the day, I would say I personally don't agree with that, or I wouldn't do that. That's just me. But I cannot impose. That's the whole point of Romans 14. You can't impose on your brother's conscience unless it is outright sin. Well, how could you say not voting Democrat because they agree with abortion and the LGBTQ agenda and all that stuff? Listen, if that person tells you I support all of that stuff, then that's a different conversation. That's a different conversation. These laws are already the law of the land. They're the law of the land already. So, again, we're talking about wisdom and folly. We're talking about, so here's my perspective. I personally don't care who people vote for, to be honest. And part of it is just, I'm not going to fight over, I'm not worried about the culture. As much as I want my kids to grow up in it, I know that the afterlife, the eternal life is what I'm living for. I'm trying to live in the character of the kingdom of heaven while I'm on the kingdom of in the kingdom of Satan. And I get there's going to be overlap. I'm going to fail sometimes. All that stuff is real. But I'm not preparing my kids to get their hopes up in someone who will give us better tax breaks. Because that's not ultimately what my life is about. I'm not ultimately worried about that. Sure, if the economy goes crazy and I lose my home, God is still sovereign over that. You know, to me, the greatest demonstration of biblical faith, and this is what I try to live by, this is the greatest demonstration, was in Daniel 3, when they were standing in front of Nebuchadnezzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whose really names were Azael, Mishael, and I forgot the other one. And that's it, is when they said, look, Nebuchadnezzar, we're not bowing down to that statue. We believe our God can save us. We believe our God will save us. But if he does not, we still not bowing down. That's real faith. It's like, hey, I think God can. I think God will. But if he doesn't, there's an aspect of, but if he doesn't, we're still not going to submit to you. In other words, I don't trust God because my circumstances, it'll change my circumstances. And this is the problem with modern day Christians in America. So much of our faith is connected to the circumstances that we face. Why don't we just hush up, take the persecution to the chin, and keep it moving? Now, I'm not saying don't vote and don't voice opposition. What I'm saying is many believers have completely lost the character of grace that they say they believe in. You're angry at this. You're accusing people of this. You know what accusing? Listen, go in a concordance or go on Bible and look up the word accuse and see how it's used in the Bible. It's never used in a way that's redeeming or helpful. Satan is the accuser of the brethren. You got all these Christians upset, accusing people, and you're angry. You're and it's just like there's no love in you when you do that. There's no mercy. Jesus told the Pharisees, I desire mercy and not sacrifice. Go and learn what this means. I think Romans 14 should be the text that guides the church when we have difference of opinions, even in stuff that seems obvious to you, like who to vote for. There's just going to be some changes there. And I'm not going to, by the grace of God, I am not going to lose the character of grace. Just because I understand and can articulate the doctrines of grace. That is the worst way to use the Bible, to say what Bible verse is that. I'm not saying we don't trust or start with the Bible. I always do. It's my authority. But I also know that the Bible gives me everything I need for life and godliness. And it's not life and godliness like they're two. It's a godly life is what it's getting at. The Bible is not the circumstantial manual where you're going to know. It's the character manual. It tells me and assures me that I can act in a way that honors the Lord no matter what's happening. Whether I'm in prison, like Paul, whether I'm free, like whether I have a lot or a little, I can still honor the Lord. If you lose that, you don't understand the gospel. Jesus did not come to transform the culture through politics. I agree. But he came to transform us so that we could show other people what transformation looks like. And sadly, many modern day Christians do not care about what transformation looks like anymore. They just care about what they're afraid of. Politics is about fear. Oh no, what's going to happen? Listen, we don't need constitutional obedience. We are called to Christological obedience. We're imitating Jesus. We're not trying to impose morality through moral law. That's constitutional righteousness. We want Christological righteousness. That's what we're after. And it's sad to watch people do that. But one way that it happens, the worst way to use the Bible is to be like, well, what Bible verse is that? I think that's so dumb, because you can say that about anything and it just won't make sense. I will go to the tape. There's only a few statements in here. Caleb was good. Was good. Wisdom and understanding comes from God. Use common sense from a biblical point. Love God. Love people. Well said, brother. I agree. How you doing? Do you belong to any dominant? My church is non-denominational, man. Non-denominational. My church is that. Yeah, I think you said it to me before, Melody. Michelle, Hananiah, Azariah. I always forget the Hananiah. I always forget that. I always mess that up. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. Yep. Radical Islam is a snake hiding in the grass. Modern Islam is the grass that hides the snake. You obviously on that. That's not what this video was about, but thanks for letting us know, bro. Voting will not add 1 second to your life. And yes, as a black woman living in the South, I know my ancestors died for the vote, but the important thing that 100%, like this is the thing. The Bible is the character manual, right? Believe in hope. I can still love. Why does Jesus say, love your enemies and pray for your enemies? That's a character statement. That's not circumstantial. Because if they're your enemies, that means they've done something to earn that moniker, right? To earn that designation. They've hurt you. They've offended you. They've done something. But Jesus says, pray for your enemies. Love your neighbor, right? Why? Because he doesn't care about, and when I say care, I don't mean he doesn't care. I just mean what's important to God is that his people represent him in the character, not in we represent him in being persevering and persistent in character, not in the policies. I'm watching all these Christians think they're just honoring the Lord because they're against abortion. Good. Thank you. Thank you. But that doesn't make you godly. It just makes you sensible, because there's non-Christians that agree with the same thing. But non-Christians don't desire to honor the Lord in the way they conduct themselves. That's where we need to be different. Just because you agree on a socio-economic or socio-political issue doesn't make you godly. It doesn't mean God is pleased, because non-Christians can do that. Just like non-Christians get married and Christians get married. That doesn't mean anything. What means something to God and what's different is when we say, I'm going to vote my conscience, but I'm not going to lose my conscience for a vote. That's the difference. And I just think like, man, people are just tripping. I think you're spot on. I think instead of always appealing to which Bible verse, God would rather have us seek wisdom and discernment for other things not found. 100%. You know what I think we should do, brother? Charles 23, I agree with that. You know what I think we should do? Instead of appealing to which Bible verse is this, how about we say, what fruit of the Spirit is that? What fruit of the Spirit? Or here's what I used to do all the time. Here's what I used to do. When my children were little, my wife really struggled with being a mom. She really struggled with it. And it was a source of major conflict for us because I loved being a dad. Loved it. I didn't grow up with a dad. And I remember being a kid saying, when I'm a dad one day, and by the grace of God, I am in many ways the dad that I wanted to be. I have a good relationship with my boys. We can talk about real stuff. We hang out, we have fun, we laugh. I still hug and kiss my boys. We got to adapt. I do those things, right? Because I wanted that. But my wife really struggled with being a mom, and I was self-righteous. She sinned too, but I was really self-righteous. I hated that. We would get into these conflicts. And I remembered there were times where I would pull up to the house knowing that she had a tough day. She was going to struggle. And I was going to walk in and be tempted. And I would just say, okay, Lord, what is the action of love required of me right now? This is what I would do. I'd play this. There was times I did do this every day for a while. What is the action of love? And I would go through what love is in 1 Corinthians 13:4. Love is patient. Love is kind. And I'd be like, okay, love is kind. It's not rude. And it doesn't insist on its own way. Those are the ways I need to be loving right now, because I'm going to be tempted to do that. That's what I would do. It wasn't, the circumstances didn't change for years, but it was God wanting me to change my character. He could have easily, you know what I'm saying? It's the principle of like, God, please help me love people more. And then what you're really praying is, God, please make people more loving. And God's like, no, I'm going to actually have them make you angry so that you can grow in being loving. That's the reality. That's why we're trying to impose morality on the culture so we feel better. And it's like, man, that ain't going to bring nobody to the Lord. So I just think, what Bible verse is that? I don't know. Grace and peace, bro. I understand your position. As you stated from 1 Corinthians, glorify God in whatever you do. In voting, we can glorify God. How does not voting glorify God? Can you speak to that? Because because whatever does not proceed from faith is sin. Like that question, and I appreciate your question, and I might be stretching here, but that question presupposes that voting glorifies God. And again, pun intended, what Bible verse says that, right? That's a constitutional reality. That's an American political. There's Christians all over the world who don't even have the option to vote. Are they not glorifying God because they're not making an effort in their political realm? No. So not voting is glorifying God. Voting is a neutral point, brother. It's a neutral point. So not voting to me is a Romans 14 issue, what we looked at earlier. I'm not voting. I don't, first of all, I mean, we could get into the political system, based on electoral votes. I mean, do you realize there's only been twice, I think in 2020 and maybe 26 recently, these are all recent, twice where the electoral votes, didn't influence the actual part, like the electoral votes went in a different direction. Like the electoral college is each state has votes, right? So I'm in Maryland. Maryland is a Democrat. It's a blue state. This is why people fight over the swing states, because those are states you can actually win depending on how you influence. But most states are red or blue. You're not winning those. And because of that, I can go and vote. Say I'm a conservative, but let's just say I go vote for Trump. Let's say I vote conservative, right? The country, it's a blue state. So the electoral votes are going to go to Kamala Harris regardless. So there's that reality that I think we often forget. But I think in general, as a believer, I think it's a Romans 14 issue. Voting is not a command of Scripture. It just says submit to the governing authorities. Now, if the government said you must vote or you're breaking the law, then that's different, because now they're making it a law, but they don't. So voting is a freedom, to use the American language, that Americans get, and I just don't participate. Primarily, and my reason for it is because I've watched people's relationships be torn to shreds because of who they voted for. And I think both are immorally. I think both sides are immoral. Both Democrats lie to black people the way Republicans lie to Christians. But I do think there are policies that are better in terms of that more aligned with my faith. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to put my hope and confidence in these people. And people say, I'm not putting my hope and confidence. Here's how you know you are. If you are offended, if the people you vote for don't win, then you put your hope and confidence in those people, 100%. Because if you really believe that God's sovereign and in control, and you voted and you lose, all right, keep going. Take it to the chin. If gas prices go up, am I going to hate it? 100%. I was in California. I'm still broke from that. I'm still recovering, but I still trust the Lord. So thanks for helping us keep Christ focused. Thank you, Melody. Appreciate you. Melody for 3. Poop, 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 poop. Thank you, Melody, for the super chat. I appreciate you. I know that this one is not going to get as many likes and follows and all of that, but I don't only talk about Caitlin Clark, right? This is real life we're talking about. Thank you for asking that question, and thank you for speaking to that. And people can feel free to disagree. If you disagree with me in the comment section, listen, man, do it to your thumbs are content. I don't really care, fam. I don't make videos because I think everyone should agree with me. I make videos because this is what I think and feel. And if you bang with it, cool. All right, I'm a dog. I'm out of here. Grace and peace. We'll see y'all on the next video. And don't think I ain't know what happened in the game yesterday with Caitlin Clark. But I'm still licking the wounds of my loss, the Commanders losing. But there's a video for that. We'll get back to that. All right, y'all. See you soon.